It's also my privilege to introduce our commencement speaker. David Francis is also a graduate of Trinity Lutheran College. He earned his BS in Biblical Studies from Trinity in 1985 and also holds an MBA and graduate certificate in e-commerce from the University of Phoenix. David is currently marketing manager and retail industry consultant at United Parcel Service. He is married to Heidi Smith Francis, also alumna of the college and member of the board of directors. They have 2 wonderful children. David and Heidi have been tireless advocates for the college over the years, volunteering their time and expertise to guide Trinity through many interesting seasons. Most recently, they have been mentors to several students in their community who have eventually enrolled at our college. In addition to a successful career with United Parcel Service, David has also invested his time and energy into his vocation of ministry. He and Heidi are currently in the process of starting a non-profit advocacy organization called Executive Christian, which will promote free coaching, motivation, and best practices for business executives to reach their fullest potential. David's life exemplifies the mission of Trinity, both in his leadership and in his commitment to serving Christ. It is with great pleasure I welcome David Francis.
President Reed, members of the board, esteemed faculty, honored guests, class of 2014, and parent venture capitalists. Good morning. I'm delighted to be speaking to you today because I've loved Trinity since the first day I set foot on campus. Let me list for you just 4 of the innumerable benefits that I've gained from this school. My first year, I had a conversion experience and surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. My second year, I proposed to that pretty sophomore who always seemed to need a lift somewhere in my car. My third year, the Trinity assigned service learning project turned into a youth ministry job, which led me to a lifelong vocation of working with youth. My senior year, the director of financial aid got me in the door with a local corporation that's been advancing my job skills ever since. So it's been 30 years. I'm still following Jesus. I'm still deeply in love with Heidi Smith Francis from the class of '84. I still work with youth, and I'm still employed by the same great employer. That tells me that Trinity offers an excellent return on investment. And in preparation for this talk this morning, I felt like I needed to confirm that I still understood the mind of a college student. So I scheduled a meeting with some of the millennial students, that is, those born after 1983. I don't know why I had any doubt that I didn't understand college anymore. After all, I know what MySpace is. So, as I met with the students, I said to them, college never really changes, right? If I was in the student apartments right now, I'd still see lava lamps and beanbag chairs, right? So the first student paused, he looked up from his cell phone, and he said quite seriously, "Wait, what?" Now, "wait, what" is not a term that we use in my business environment. So, feeling a little frightened, I turned to the next student and I said, "You've seen beanbag chairs, right?" And he said, "Is that on Hulu or is that on Netflix?" So, duly frightened, I resolved to study the millennials from a safe distance. I went home, I activated my modem, I logged onto AOL, and I've done a great deal of research. Seniors, this day, like no other in your life, contains both joy and fear. You have the joy of accomplishment, but there is some fear of the unknown. But if we take a look at the research I brought to share with you today, I believe you're going to leave here with less fear and joy that's beyond expectations. Let me talk about where our millennial world is going in the next 15 years. That's about the time I expect you'll be hitting senior management positions. 15 years from now, the lesser developed nations have flourished. 2 to 3 billion people have crossed the line from poverty into middle-class lifestyles. 60% of the world population now lives in cities, and in the next few years, that number will increase to 75% of the world living in an urban setting. The US, formerly 80% white, is on its way to a world where only 43% of the population is Caucasian, and Caucasians are just one of many different minorities represented in the United States. Unfortunately, just as the World Clowning Association announced back in 2014, there has been a massive decrease in the demand for professional clowning. There's huge demand, though, still for workers in healthcare and technology, and no doubt there's going to be many new industries developing between now and then. But most importantly, our own student government president, Frank Josiah Olavsky, is doing quite well on Dancing with the Stars. So you see, we're entering a world that is constantly in transition. Our class of 2014 is not exclusively made up of millennials, of course. Notable example, Steve Ditto, who is just completing 30 years of service with the Sheriff's Office. The wonderful advantage to our more seasoned students is that now you've lived among the millennials for 4 years. You understand their mysterious ways, and you're perfectly positioned to connect to both former generations and future generations in a way that's going to lead to career success. But let me focus a little bit more on the millennials because they're taking over. In 15 years, 75% of our workforce is going to be made up of this new generation. Millennials, I think that you don't always understand how different and amazing you are from previous generations. Let me explain some of the differences. You multitask. You were born into technology that others of us have had to learn uncomfortably later in life. You're hyper-connected. You have 20 best friends. That's new. You have 6,000 friends on Facebook, and you still have 13 friends connected to the MySpace page that you have not accessed in 7 years. You don't date in couples. You don't dance in pairs. You just do group hangouts. You can go to bed at 4 p.m. or 4 a.m., not really note the difference. I think your sense of time is linked to a different planet in our solar system. You gain deep spiritual insight from the Apostle Paul, Charles Xavier, and Stan Lee. Do you believe that your vocation and occupation should be the same thing, which is wonderful? In other words, you want to align your career with your purpose in life. Now, your parents don't know what BuzzFeed is, but just today on BuzzFeed, you learned that when Da Vinci's Mona Lisa is turned upside down, it looks just exactly like a cat in a shark costume. Discuss that over lunch, please. You love to shop and dine out, or at least you will after you have some money in your pocket. By 2018, your generation is going to be injecting more money into the retail economy than the baby boomers. In fact, your economic contribution is so substantial that many very large firms have been spending remarkable resources to understand your economic impact. Let me share with you some of the research I've discovered. Ad Age magazine says you're willing to work hard, but you'll choose work hour flexibility over pay in the future. Pew Research says you are the first generation born completely immersed in the digital era. You're less trusting of institutions than previous generations. You've had economic hardship, but you're very optimistic about the future. Deloitte says you believe business is creating jobs and creating prosperity, and that's good. But you also believe business is ignoring social problems that business could impact, and that's bad. You choose to volunteer, you choose to donate, and you want to lead. Your generation really is quite remarkable, and I believe your generation is just what this world needs to address the problems we're going to be dealing with in the future. I do have a concern about you, though. In spite of your best intentions, I believe later in your career, your creativity and energy will foster criticism from those who resist change in your organizations. But I've seen Trinity students display confident assertiveness. This confidence will serve you well and help you push back on naysayers that are preventing your bright minds from getting things done. Let me point out a few additional things to bolster your self-confidence. Here's what's truly exceptional about Trinity Lutheran College seniors. You're part of only 7% of the world that has a college degree. You're team-oriented. You embrace cultures that are different than your own. You've been mentored in a 7-to-1 student-teacher ratio. Service learning has made you extremely sensitive to social issues. The future of society says that in the decades to come, we need people who have the ability to connect to others in a deep and direct way. That's you. They continue to say we need people with the ability to operate in different cultural settings, and that's totally you. Let me add to your confidence with 3 important Bible verses. Ephesians chapter 1, "For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight." That means you were in Jesus' mind before he created the universe, making you incredibly important. Romans chapter 5, "For God demonstrates his own love for us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." That means before Jesus gave his life for you, he'd already seen you at your very worst and still loved you without hesitation. You are incredibly loved. Psalm 139, the writer speaking to God says, "You knit me together in my mother's womb." That means you were handmade. You were uniquely designed for an important purpose that is linked to God's plan to rescue humanity, a purpose that will fulfill you. There is no one else like you. So you have the talents of your generation, you have a world-class education, and the knowledge that you're extremely valuable. If you absorb these facts, you're going to have tremendous confidence going forward, and you deserve to have it. Let me tell you what's next for you. Have you ever considered the Old Testament model for senior management? Several of the most important leaders in the Old Testament had education, experience in government or business, and a willingness to surrender to God's master plan. So let's take a look at the life of Moses. In Exodus, we learn that Pharaoh is abusing the Israelites and killing their male babies. So when Moses is 3 months old, his mother realizes she can't hide him forever. But she's a smart woman and she's done some research. She has friends who work in Pharaoh's court. Essentially, they do housekeeping for the Real Housewives of Egypt. She must have heard from them that the princess loves babies. She also knows that the princess likes to swim just down the road at Nile Beach. So she calls her daughter and she gives her some sales training. The next day, they go to the beach. They strategically place Moses in his car seat among the lily pads. Daughter babysits from a distance while she plays Candy Crush on her cuneiform tablet. She sees the princess arrive. She sees the princess pick up the baby. She sees the royal nose wrinkle as the aroma of summer diaper wafts upward. At that moment, when the customer is perfectly positioned to make a buying decision, the daughter runs forward and says, "I know a great nanny service, let me make a call." So the princess starts paying Moses' own mother to care for him, and she becomes the first woman in history to make her husband uncomfortable by bringing home more money than he does. So later, Moses goes to live at the palace, and while he's living at the palace, he watches the whole world arrive to do business in Pharaoh's court. He gets Hebrew culture from mom. He gets education on international trade and diplomacy while living downtown. He's living at the United Nations and the Mall of America at the same time. Egypt's very advanced in this era. It has teachers, engineers, roads, canals. It even has microbrews. So Moses gets the most advanced education available in that era. But I believe that even as a member of Pharaoh's family, he was not accepted. His peers would have had to have been very pretentious. They would have insulted him. He deals with their insults. He sees the abuse of his people. And finally, he acts out. He murders an Egyptian. He has to leave. Now, I picture him a little bit like a little boy running away from home. I know that's not fair. Sorry, Moses. In my imagination, he's still 40 years old, but as he hits the road, he's carrying a little teeny Pokemon backpack in one hand, and in the other, he has a papyrus basket that's filled with Red Bull and Hot Pockets. He runs all the way to Midian. He sits down by a well. He meets 7 sisters that are out walking their sheep. He delivers them from a dispute with some thugs. The ladies see a man in nice, expensive clothing. They hear his big city way of talking. They admire his Egyptian blue eyeshadow. And they take him home to meet Dad. Dad sees an educated man who has international business connections. Shortly thereafter, Moses is married into the family and helping Dad run the tribal business. So Moses spends 40 years running what is essentially a small corporation. He learns military strategy and supply chain management. Now his resume contains both a great education and substantial management experience. So let's jump forward to when Moses is 80 years old. Midian is near a beach town. It seems like it's time to retire, but that's when God calls him to action. It seems unfair, perhaps, but imagine how bad Moses' life would have been had God not intervened when he was an infant. Since the Lord creates us, develops us, sustains us, protects us, He claims the right in return to guide our lives, but he always offers more in return than he expects from us. So the official introduction happens while Moses is out on the ranch. God calls him to leave his cushy agribusiness job and begin a risky startup. The Lord says to him in Exodus, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." This is Yahweh asserting his authority. He's telling Moses, "You don't know me, but I made you, I own you, and I'm your boss. I'm the owner of a new enterprise, and you're going to be my new CEO. Now here's your instructions." He tells Moses to go to Israel and gather the elders. He's going to explain the new corporate mission statement, and then he's going to find that he has the board of directors for his new startup. Yahweh tells Moses that after the plagues have had their impact and have stunned the Egyptians into submission, that every woman is to ask her neighbor for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. This is the venture capital that finances the new startup. Now the rest is history. When Moses combines education with practical career experience and submits to God's plan for his life, God changes the world through him, and he gained a life more fulfilling than anything he'd ever imagined. God assigned 137 chapters of Scripture to tell the story of Moses leading Israel, but only 3 of them describe his pre-leadership life. That means 98% of the story depicts Moses leading people at God's direction. The lesson for us is that when God evaluates the significance of our lives, he focuses his attention on the impact of our service to the world rather than the mistakes of our youth. Class of 2014, you are similar to Moses. He's educated and knows business, so do you. He's multicultural, so are you. At the beginning of his career, he lacked substantial experience, but he got it, and so will you. And like you, he was disillusioned with organizations he knew, and he wanted something better. Now, the world is changing fast. The organizations that you're going to work with in the future cannot possibly be fully prepared for all the massive transitions ahead. But if you can lead them to modernize, to become adoptable, to become more focused on customers, it's a win-win situation. The organization will flourish and you will reach your full potential. The sooner you assert your confidence, the higher you'll rise in your ministries, your nonprofits, and your businesses. The higher you rise, the more leverage you'll have to influence the world that needs you. Let me conclude with this. Take a moment with me and picture that moment before the Lord created the universe. See Jesus planning you. See him thinking about your DNA. See him thinking about redeeming you on Calvary. See him planning your potential and creating a role for you that would allow you to fulfill every bit of your potential while connecting with his plan to rescue humanity. If that image is not mind-boggling enough, consider the fact that he strategically timed you to be born in an era where even one human being doing one small thing can impact the lives of thousands. In our millennial world to come, Jesus has allotted each of us innumerable opportunities to foster growth, support humanity, and live a life of lasting significance. Class of 2014, I'm very excited to see what you're going to accomplish in the future. Thank you.